March 1986, night over Libya. Two Soviet-built surface-to-air missiles rip into the sky, climbing at more than Mach 5. On every Libyan radar screen, the target is clear, a single high-altitude intruder crossing their airspace at the edge of space. An SR-71 Blackbird. In any other aircraft, that warning means one thing: brake hard, dump chaff, pray the missile loses lock. In the Senior 71, the pilot does something else. He doesn't jink. He doesn't deploy countermeasures. He calmly pushes both throttles all the way forward. The J-58 engines behind him roar harder. The Blackbird surges. Seconds later, the missile's tracks on radar start to curve and fade. They never get close enough to see the Blackbird's contrail. They simply run out of energy and fall away, defeated by one thing: speed. After the mission, the pilot and his RSO turn in their film Battle Damage Zero. Mission complete. The exact maximum speed they reached that night. To this day, the United States Air Force will not tell you. Officially, the SR-71's top speed is Mach 3.2. That's the number in the record books. That's what you'll see on museum placards. Unofficially, pilots talk about Mach 3-point-something. Memoirs hint at Mach 3.3, 3.4, even 3.5 and beyond in emergencies, when missiles were coming and survival mattered more than the rulebook. The true limit, the fastest any SR-71 ever flew, is still classified, more than 30 years after the last Blackbird shut down its engines for the final time. Think about that. We can tell you the F-22 Raptor's redline. We know exactly how fast the space shuttle re-entered. But the real top speed of a jet designed in the 1960s, retired in the 1990s, sitting in museums today, still a secret. There's a reason for that. And once you understand it, you'll never look at Cold War official numbers the same way again. You're watching Elite U.S. Military. Today we re-breaking down why the SR-71 Blackbird's true top speed is still a mystery, what pilots actually did over hostile territory, what the engineering says was possible, and why the US is still keeping some of those numbers locked away. The official story starts in the summer of 1976. It's July 28th at Beale Air Force Base in California. An SR-71 lines up on the runway for a very different sort of mission. This isn't a covert dash over Russia or North Korea. This is a record attempt, carefully planned, instrumented, and monitored. The Blackbird takes off, climbs to altitude, and accelerates along a measured course. On that day, over that track, it sets a speed record that still stands. Just over 2,190 miles per hour, about Mach 3.2 at high altitude. The Fédération Aéronautique Internationale certifies it. Headlines declare the SR-71 the fastest air-breathing jet aircraft on Earth. That's the number the world knows. Mach 3.2. But if you spent any time around Blackbird crews, you heard another number just as often. Mach 3+, not Mach 3.2, not Mach 3.25, just 3+. Pilots wore patches with 3+. Ditched on them, maintenance crews cracked jokes about it. One Blackbird driver famously started adding little plus signs to safety posters around his base, until a very unamused safety officer made him stop. Why the coiners? Because Mach 3.2 was never the whole story. That number represents a controlled, certified world record run on a specific day under specific conditions. It's the speed the Air Force was comfortable putting in front of Congress, the press, and foreign observers. Operationally, over the Soviet Union, over the Middle East, over wherever the president and the CIA needed eyes, things were less tidy. Remember, the SR-71 wasn't a stunt plane. It was a working reconnaissance platform sent into the most heavily defended airspace on the planet. Soviet and Warsaw-packed air defenses evolved over time. New SAM systems came online. MiGs and Sukhoi got better. The Blackbird's safety margin, its ability to go just a little bit faster and a little bit higher than the threats, wasn't some theoretical bonus. It was life insurance. When we talk about its true top speed, we're not asking, what could it do on a perfect test day? We're really asking, when missiles were in the air and the pilot shoved the throttles forward, what did the real world look like inside that cockpit at 80,000 feet? It's April 1986, following a terrorist bombing in a West Berlin nightclub that killed American servicemen. President Reagan greenlights Operation El Dorado Canyuna, series of airstrikes against military targets in Libya, F-111 bombers and other jet strike sites around Tripoli and Benghazi. But once the dust settles, a crucial question hangs in the air. What did we actually hit? Back then, satellites weren't the all-seeing real-time eyes in the sky they are today. Their coverage was limited, and bad weather could block their view entirely. So, to get the answers they needed, the US turned to a legendary Cold War asset, the SR-71 Blackbird. In his famous book, Sled Driver, SR-71 pilot Brian Schul recounts flying these high-stakes reconnaissance missions over Libya. The Libyans weren't defenseless. They had recently upgraded their air defenses with new Soviet-made surface-to-air missiles, or SAMs. On paper, these missiles were frighteningly capable. supposedly able to intercept targets flying at Mach 5 at extreme altitudes. During one mission, Schul and his backseat, the Reconnaissance Systems officer, were cruising at their standard speed and altitude Mach 3.2 soaring above 80,000 feet. This was the Blackbird's typical high-speed cruise, the number you'd find in any declassified manual. Then, the call came from the back seat, multiple missile launches. In any other aircraft, that's your cue to start evasive maneuvers, dive, turn, deploy countermeasures. But in the SR-71 the procedure was much simpler. You push the throttles forward. Schul describes firewalling the throttles, watching the Mach number climb higher and higher. The jet was under immense stress, and after what felt like an eternity, his RSO gently suggested he might want to ease off the power. That's when Schul realized the throttles were still pushed all the way to their stops, and the jet was still accelerating. He later revealed they had exceeded Mach 3.5 on that run, simply outrunning the missiles fired at them. Now, it's important to understand that Mach numbers at 80,000 feet are different from those at sea level. The speed of sound is lower up there. But even with that adjustment, we're talking about a speed hundreds of miles per hour faster than the official public specifications. And this wasn't some souped-up test plane. This was a standard, operational SR-71, flown by a regular crew. Other pilots have shared similar stories. Controlled test flights saw Blackbirds hit Mach 3.4 without redlining. On missions where lives were on the line, crews were authorized to push past the standard Mach 3.2, nudging into the upper threes to escape danger. So, if Mach 3.2 was the Senior 71's everyday speed, and Mach 3.5 was its emergency get-out-of-jail-free card, what was the absolute top speed of this incredible machine? Well, that's where the real engineering story begins. Thanks for watching. The SR-71 wasn't magic, it obeyed physics. The trick was, it operated in a regime where every physical limit was being leaned on hard. Three big factors fought against top speed. 1. Inlet airflow and unstarts. 2. Heat. 3. Materials. The Blackbird's nose, leading edges, and engine inlets created and managed shock waves as it sliced through the air. Those long, pointed spikes in the engine nacelles weren't cosmetic. They moved in and out automatically to position the main shock wave just right, slowing and compressing incoming air so the engines could breathe without choking. At around Mach 3.2, everything was in balance. The spikes, the bypass doors, the internal ducting, the compressor all working in harmony, pushed faster, and the shockwave patterns changed. Above about Mach 3.5 to 3.6. According to engineers who've spoken after retirement, the nose shock could get so narrow and so close to the inlet that it risks slamming straight into the engine instead of being tamed by the spike system. When that happened, you got what pilots called an unsupported one engine's compression flow would suddenly break down. The thrust on that side would crater the jet, now being shoved hard by one healthy ramjet-like inlet, and one sick or stalled one would yaw violently at 80,000 feet at Mach 3+. That kind of sideways kick can ruin your whole day. The inlet controls and pilots were trained to catch and correct unstarts throttle movements, spike adjustments, sometimes cross-feeding air, but it was never something you wanted to flirt with casually. High Mach unstarts were one of the practical governors on Senior 71 speed. The second was heat. Going Mach 3.2 at that altitude doesn't just make the cockpit warm, it makes the airframe itself a heat-soaked object. Friction and compression heat the titanium skin to over 600 degrees Fahrenheit, 315 degrees Celsius on the hottest points. The windshield can hit well above boiling water temperatures. The air entering the engines, the compressor inlet temperature climbs into the hundreds of degrees Celsius. The J58 engines had a documented redline compressor inlet temperature of around 800 degrees Fahrenheit, about 425 degrees Celsius. Beyond that, turbine blades, seals, and other components could start suffering damage in seconds. That temperature limit, not just Mach number, often capped how fast crews were allowed to push, especially on long cruise segments where the metal never got a chance to cool. Push the throttles forward to outrun a missile? Absolutely. Live there for half an hour? Not smart. The third constraint was the titanium itself. Titanium gave the SR-71 strength at high temperature, but it wasn't indestructible. The Blackbird's skin and structure were designed with certain thermal expansion and stress levels in mind. At Mach 3+, the airframe literally stretched fuel tanks that leaked on the ground, sealed at speed as the metal grew by inches. Lockheed's engineers built in safety margins, but go too far and you risked creep, warping, or even catastrophic failures in spars and joints. Declassified studies done after the Blackbird's retirement, when engineers looked back with newer analysis tools, they suggested that if you built an SR-71-like design with modern materials and cooling techniques, its inlet and airframe concept could theoretically be pushed toward Mach 5 to 6. But that was theory. For a jet, that would have been a different airplane. The real SR-71s, built with 1960s titanium, 1960s sealants, and 1960s engine metallurgy, had a narrower safe envelope. How fast can a plane fly? I mean, really, truly fast. Today we're talking about an aircraft so quick, its true top speed is still a topic of debate, decades after its retirement. Meet the legendary SR-71 Blackbird. This isn't your average jet. The Blackbird was a high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft developed in the 1960s, and it looked like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. Its mission was simple: fly so high and so fast that nothing could touch it. Officially, Lockheed and the U.S. Air Force stated its top speed was in excess of Mach 3.2, which is more than 2,200 miles per hour. To put that in perspective, that's faster than a rifle bullet. You could fly from New York to Los Angeles in just over an hour. But here's where it gets interesting. Was that its true limit? Many pilots and engineers believed the SR-71 could go even faster. The Mach 3.2 figure was often quoted as its continuous cruise speed, not its absolute maximum. The airframe was designed to heat up during flight, with panels fitting loosely on the ground and expanding to form a tight seal at high speeds. The hotter it got, the better it performed. There's a famous story, a favorite among aviation fans, that perfectly captures this. An SR-71 pilot was cruising over the western United States when he overheard air traffic control talking to various aircraft, including a Cessna and a Navy F-18, who were all playfully requesting ground speed checks. After listening for a bit, the Blackbird pilot keyed his mic and calmly asked for his own ground speed. There was a long pause, and then the controller came back, his voice trembling with excitement. "Aspen 20, I show you at 1,980 knots. That's over 2,200 miles per hour. The pilot simply replied, "We're showing a little faster than that, but thanks." This story, and others like it, fuel the speculation. Some pilots have hinted at reaching Mach 3.4 or even 3.5 during operational flights, pushing the envelope when necessary. The limitation wasn't always the engines, but the engine inlet temperature. Go too fast, and things could get too hot even for the Blackbird. Because of this secrecy, the Senior 71's absolute top speed remains one of aviation's greatest mysteries. It was a machine built to outrun everything, and it did its job so well that we're still trying to figure out just how fast it really was. What a marvel of engineering. Thanks for watching, and if you love stories about incredible machines, make sure to subscribe for more. See you next time. It's that they remember the briefings, too. Museums play along for the same reason. At places like the Strategic Air Command and Aerospace Museum, you'll see SR-71s proudly displayed with signs that say, in so many words, exact top speed, classified. That's not laziness, that's policy. And think about what that policy itself communicates. It signals that the Blackbird wasn't just a cool, fast plane. It was part of a larger system of advantage: technical, informational, strategic. Even as a static exhibit, it still wears a cloak. There's one more point that often gets overlooked. When the Senior 71 was flying, its real power wasn't that it could go Mach X, it was that it could go fast enough, high enough, long enough, over and over, without anyone ever laying a missile on it. Over 3,500 plus operational sorties through some of the densest air defenses in history's Soviet sandbelts, North Vietnamese networks, Middle Eastern hot zones. No Senior 71 was ever shot down by enemy action. Thousands of miles, thousands of missile launches, countless radar locks, 0 kills. The standard evasive maneuver in that world wasn't a desperate barrel roll, it was to accelerate and climb. That's not about bragging rights. That's about margin the space between what your aircraft can do and what the threat can do. The fact that we still don't know exactly how wide that margin was is not a bug of history. It's a feature of how the US thinks about air power. So where does that leave us? After decades of half answers, memoir, hints, and declassified fragments, this is what we can say with confidence. The official certified top speed of the Senior 71 is about Mach 3.2. In practice, it routinely cruised in that neighborhood on missions, test flights, and some operational emergencies pushed it into the Mach 3.3 to 3.5 band. Engineering studies suggest the airframe and inlet concept could have gone a bit faster with better materials, maybe into the mid-3s safely. With hypothetical new materials, the same kind of design could reach significantly higher Mach numbers. But that would be a different aircraft, in a different era. The single fastest speed an SR-71 ever flew, on any day, over any range, is still not public. Will we ever see that number? Maybe in another 30 or 40 years, when whatever that knowledge protects today has also been retired and wheeled into a museum. Maybe never. But in a way, the exact digit doesn't matter. What matters is this. In the early 1960s, with slide rules and drafting boards, American engineers built an aircraft so far ahead of its time that 6 decades later, we still haven't put anything faster into regular operational service. They built it so well that its performance envelope is still sensitive enough to keep parts of it in the dark. The Blackbird's true top speed is a mystery by design, because American air power isn't just about what we can do. It's about what everyone else can't be sure we can't do. You've been watching Elite U.S. Military. If this deep dive into SR-71 myths and realities got you thinking, and you want to follow up on the wildest Blackbird missions ever flown, from outrunning missiles over North Vietnam to racing dawn across continents, tell us in the comments. Type Blackbird so we know you made it all the way to the end and you're ready for part 2. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to Elite U.S. Military, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next breakdown from retired legends that still guard their secrets. to the next generation aircraft silently inheriting their crown.